My aunt's voice cracked through the phone. Adam, your dad doesn't recognize you anymore. Trent, he took everything. I stood in the freezing street in Seoul, staring at my phone, heart pounding like a drum. The neon signs around me blurred as her words sank in. What do you mean, everything? I asked, my breath forming clouds in the cold air. She hesitated, and I could hear her crying softly. The house. His accounts. Power of attorney. Adam, I'm so sorry. I tried to stop him, but by the time I found out, it was already done. My hands trembled. I'd been halfway across the world, building a career, sending money home every single month. And my own brother, my own flesh and blood, had cut me out completely. He'd waited until I was thousands of miles away, unable to defend myself or Dad. The streetlights seemed to dim around me. Everything I'd worked for, every promise I'd made to Dad, felt like it was slipping through my fingers. But I wasn't going to let Trent win. Not like this. Before we continue, I will like to know where you're watching from in the comment section. Also hit the subscribe button and share this video, as this will help this video to travel far so others can learn also. Growing up, I was always the one who kept quiet, got good grades, and stayed out of trouble. Teachers loved me. Dad trusted me. I was the good son, who never caused problems or asked for much. Trent? He was the opposite. He partied through high school, dropped out of college twice, and always had some excuse for why nothing was ever his fault. Dad used to shake his head and say, I count on you, son. Trent, he'll figure it out eventually. I believed him. I thought Trent would grow up, get serious, maybe start a real career. But I was wrong. Dead wrong. While I studied hard and got into a good university, Trent bounced between dead-end jobs, always borrowing money he never paid back. When I landed a teaching position in Seoul, Dad was so proud. He hugged me tight and said, You're going to do great things. I just never imagined that leaving would give Trent the perfect opportunity to steal everything. I never thought figuring it out meant robbing our father blind while I wasn't looking. Before I left for Korea, Dad and I sat at the old oak table in the kitchen. The same table where Mom used to serve Sunday dinners before she passed. I told him I'd help pay off the house if he promised to leave it for both of us someday. He looked at me with misty eyes and shook my hand firmly. You're the only one I trust with this, Adam. You've always been responsible. That handshake meant everything to me. It was a promise between father and son, something sacred. I wired money every single month without fail. Over 2 years, I sent more than $22,000. I lived in a tiny apartment, ate cheap meals, and saved every penny I could to help Dad keep his home. I'd call him every week and he'd thank me, telling me how much it meant to him. Then I came home to nothing. The house was gone. The money was gone. And Dad barely remembered my name. The house wasn't just sold, it was gutted, remodeled, and handed over to some family friend I'd never even heard of. When I drove by it after landing back in the States, my stomach twisted into knots. The blue paint Dad loved was replaced with gray. The garden Mom had planted was torn up and replaced with rocks. Everything that made it our home was erased. Trent claimed Dad wanted to downsize and move into assisted living. But I saw the photos my aunt sent me. Dad's favorite recliner, the one he'd sit in every evening, was gone. The framed wedding photo of him and Mom that hung in the hallway for 30 years? Gone. Even Mom's old sewing desk, the one Dad refused to get rid of because it reminded him of her? All of it vanished. No one even bothered to tell me. I found out through a cousin's Facebook post showing the house with a sold sign. That's when I knew Trent hadn't just made a mistake. He'd planned this. I walked into the assisted living home with my heart racing and my hands sweating. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I signed in at the front desk. The nurse smiled politely and led me down the hallway to Dad's room. I knocked softly and stepped inside. Dad was sitting in a chair by the window, staring outside at nothing. Hey, Dad, I said gently, trying to keep my voice steady. He turned slowly and looked at me with empty, confused eyes. There was no recognition, no spark, nothing. Then Trent walked in behind me and Dad's face lit up. Hey, son, he said warmly, reaching out to Trent. My chest tightened. I felt like someone had punched me in the gut and twisted the knife. That moment broke something deep inside me. I wanted to scream, to shake Dad and remind him who I was. But I didn't. Instead, I smiled calmly and nodded. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just started planning. Because I knew one thing for sure. Trent had built his empire on lies, and I was going to bring it all crashing down. Trent thought I'd explode when I saw Dad's reaction. He stood there with his arms crossed, smirking like he'd already won. He wanted me to yell, to lose control, to look unstable in front of the staff so he could paint me as the problem. But I didn't give him the satisfaction. Instead, I smiled and said, "Great job, Trent. You really took charge while I was gone." His smirk faltered for just a second. He wasn't expecting that. "Yeah, well, someone had to step up," he said, trying to sound confident. I nodded slowly. "I'm sure you did what you thought was best." Inside, I was boiling. But I kept my face calm, my voice steady. I shook his hand and told him we'd talk soon. As I walked out of that building, I made a promise to myself. Trent had played the long game, manipulating Dad while I was thousands of miles away. Now it was my turn. I was going to watch his every move, document everything, and wait for the perfect moment to strike. He had no idea what was coming. I requested Dad's financial records under the excuse of helping with taxes. Trent shrugged and said, "I've got it handled, but sure, whatever." He thought I was just being nosy. He had no idea what I was really looking for. When I got the files, I spent hours going through every single page. Bank statements, legal documents, signed contracts, everything was there. And that's when I found it. A caregiver contract, signed by Dad, paying Trent $4,000 every single month from Dad's own savings account. $4,000. Every month. For what? Trent wasn't a trained caregiver. He had no certifications, no medical background. This wasn't legitimate compensation, it was theft dressed up in legal language. The contract was dated just 2 months after I left for Korea. 2 months. That's how fast he moved. I ran the numbers in my head. Over 2 years, Trent had pulled nearly $100,000 from Dad's accounts, all under the guise of care. That money wasn't for Dad's well-being. It was Trent's personal paycheck for robbing our father blind. While Dad was stuck in a basic assisted living facility with peeling wallpaper and overworked staff, Trent was living large. He moved into a brand new condo downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the city. He drove a shiny new truck that still had the dealer tags on it when I first saw him. He posted photos on social media, bragging about investing wisely and building his future. But the paper trail told a completely different story. Every single purchase traced back to Dad's dwindling accounts. The condo deposit? Dad's savings. The truck payments? Dad's retirement fund. Even the furniture and flat-screen TV in Trent's living room? All paid for with money that should have been keeping Dad comfortable. And then there was his so-called business. Trent claimed he was running a consulting company, but when I dug deeper, I found invoices he'd written to himself. Fake services. Fake clients. Just another way to funnel Dad's money into his own pockets while pretending to be a successful entrepreneur. It was all a lie. A carefully constructed illusion. Dad's nurse, Carla, pulled me aside during one of my visits. She was in her 50s, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" she asked quietly. We stepped into the hallway, away from Trent's watchful eyes. "Your dad used to ask about you every single day," she said, her voice low. He'd say, "Has Adam called yet? When is Adam coming home?" My throat tightened. "What happened?" I asked. Carla glanced around nervously before continuing. "Trent stopped letting me take your calls. He'd intercept them, tell your dad you were too busy, that you'd moved on with your life. Eventually, your dad just stopped asking." I felt my hands curl into fists. "He told Dad I abandoned him?" Carla nodded. "I'm sorry, Adam. I should have said something sooner, but Trent made it clear I'd lose my job if I interfered." I thanked her and walked away, my mind racing. Trent hadn't just stolen money. He'd stolen my relationship with Dad, rewriting history while I was halfway across the world, powerless to stop him. I needed proof. Real, undeniable proof that would hold up if things got legal. So during my next visit, I left a small voice recorder hidden under the magazines on Dad's bedside table. I told Trent I'd forgotten something and would be back the next day. When I returned and retrieved the recorder, my hands shook as I pressed play. What I heard made my blood run cold. Trent's voice, sharp and angry. He doesn't need to hear from Adam. He's not part of this family anymore. You've got me, and that's all you need. There was silence, then Dad's confused voice. But Adam's my son too. Forget about Adam, Trent snapped. He left you. I'm the one who stayed. I sat in my car, listening to the recording over and over. Trent had weaponized Dad's condition, using his memory loss and confusion to erase me completely. He'd turned himself into the hero and me into the villain. But now I had it on tape. Every cruel word. Every manipulation. This was my proof, and I wasn't going to waste it. I opened a legal file and organized everything. Wiring receipts showing the $22,000 I'd sent, bank records proving Trent's withdrawals, and the audio recording of him poisoning Dad against me. My first instinct was to sue. To take Trent to court and expose everything publicly. But then I stopped. A lawsuit would be messy, emotional, and public. It would drag Dad through the mud and turn our family drama into a spectacle. Trent would play the victim, claim I was jealous or vindictive, and try to spin the narrative in his favor. I needed a better plan. Something quieter. Something that would make him fall by his own hand without me looking like the bad guy. I wanted Trent to lose everything the same way he'd taken everything from Dad, slowly, carefully, and without anyone realizing what was happening until it was too late. I started mapping out my strategy, thinking through every move like a chess game. And I knew exactly where to start. I contacted Dad's old lawyer, Mr. Harrison, who'd handled his will and estate planning years ago. I asked for a quiet meeting, away from Trent's prying eyes. I need to ask you something, I said, sliding the documents across his desk. Is there a backup power of attorney on file? Mr. Harrison adjusted his glasses and flipped through the papers. Then he looked up at me with raised eyebrows. There is. You. I blinked. Me. Your father named you as backup power of attorney years ago, back when you were in college. It was meant to activate if the primary became incapacitated or unfit to serve. My heart raced. And Trent never revoked it? Mr. Harrison shook his head. No. He filed his own power of attorney, but he never properly canceled yours. Legally, you still have standing. I felt a surge of hope. This was my way back in. This was how I could protect Dad and take control away from Trent without a messy court battle. I thanked Mr. Harrison and left his office with a plan forming in my mind. Trent had made a critical mistake, and I was going to use it against him. I quietly took over Dad's medical file by presenting my backup power of attorney to the facility administrator. She reviewed it, made some calls, and within a week, I had full access. The first thing I did was request a new neurological assessment. Dad's original diagnosis had been rushed, signed off by a doctor Trent had handpicked, someone who barely spent 15 minutes with Dad before declaring him severely cognitively impaired. I arranged for a different neurologist, Dr. Patel, to do a comprehensive evaluation. After 2 hours of testing, she called me into her office. Mr. Adam, I have to be honest with you. Your father's cognitive decline is real, but it's not as severe as the previous diagnosis suggested. I leaned forward. What do you mean? His memory issues appear to be accelerated by environmental factors, stress, lack of stimulation, and poor social interaction. In my professional opinion, with the right care, he could improve significantly. She handed me her written report. It read, "Cognitive decline appears accelerated by poor environment and stress." Translation? Trent's neglect was making Dad worse. I had my proof that Trent wasn't just stealing money, he was actively harming Dad's health. I needed Trent to make a mistake. So I staged a conversation in front of him during one of my visits. I called up a family friend, actually my old college roommate who owed me a favor, and spoke loudly enough for Trent to overhear. Yeah, we're probably going to have to sell the condo. Dad's financial advisor flagged some major inconsistencies in the accounts. They're talking about getting investigators involved. I watched Trent out of the corner of my eye. His face went pale. His hands clenched into fists. "What inconsistencies?" he interrupted, his voice shaky. I turned to him casually. "Oh, just some routine stuff." The advisor noticed some unusual withdrawals and wanted to make sure everything was properly documented. No big deal. But it was a big deal to Trent. He knew exactly what those inconsistencies were because he'd created them. Over the next few days, I noticed him becoming increasingly paranoid. He started calling the bank, demanding statements, checking his accounts obsessively. He'd taken the bait, and now he was scrambling. I just sat back and watched him unravel, piece by piece. The accountant Trent had been using was a woman named Linda. She'd been filing Dad's taxes and managing some of his accounts, completely unaware of what Trent was really doing. I reached out to her privately, asking for a meeting to discuss Dad's financial situation. When we met at a quiet coffee shop, I showed her everything: the caregiver contract, the fake business invoices, the withdrawals that didn't match any legitimate expenses. Her face went from confused to horrified in seconds. "Oh my God," she whispered, flipping through the pages. "I had no idea. Trent told me he was handling your father's care full-time. He said the payments were legitimate compensation." "They're not," I said flatly. "He's been stealing from Dad for over 2 years." Linda's hands shook as she set the papers down. "This is criminal. I could lose my license if anyone thinks I was involved." "You weren't," I assured her. "But I need you to testify to what you know if it comes to that." She nodded immediately. "Absolutely. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." Now I had an accountant on my side, someone who could verify the financial fraud from a professional standpoint. Another piece of the puzzle locked into place. Trent had a girlfriend named Kelly. She was in her late 20s, worked at a salon, and genuinely seemed to believe Trent was a successful businessman. I'd seen her at family gatherings, always smiling and showing off pictures of their trips together. One afternoon, I invited her to lunch under the pretense of getting to know my brother's girlfriend better. She agreed eagerly. Over salads and iced tea, I let her talk. She rambled about their relationship, their future plans, how proud she was of Trent's success. Then she said something that made my stomach turn. "He told me about your dad. How sad it is that you just left and never looked back." I set my fork down. "Is that what he said?" She nodded. "Yeah. He said your dad barely knows you anymore because you've been gone so long." I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. I played her the audio recording, Trent's voice telling Dad to forget about me, claiming I wasn't part of the family. Kelly's face went ghost white. "He lied to me," she whispered. "He lied to me too," I said softly. She left the restaurant in tears. 2 days later, she broke up with Trent. Another crack in his carefully built facade. I started visiting Dad more regularly, bringing things that might jog his memory. One evening, I brought an old photo album filled with pictures from my childhood. Dad was sitting by the window, staring blankly as usual. I sat down beside him and opened the album. "Hated. Look at this one." I pointed to a picture of me at my high school graduation, wearing a cap and gown, standing next to him and Mom. He stared at it for a long time. His fingers traced the edge of the photo. Then, slowly he whispered, "You're my younger boy, you used to play piano." My throat tightened. "Yeah, that's me." His eyes filled with tears. "I remember now. You played that Chopin piece, the one your mother loved." I nodded, struggling to keep my composure. "I did. I still play sometimes." He reached out and squeezed my hand. "Don't leave again." "I won't," I promised. In that moment, I realized Dad wasn't as far gone as Trent wanted everyone to believe. He just needed the right environment, the right care, and the right people around him. And I was going to make sure he got it. With Mr. Harrison's help, I quietly filed paperwork to reactivate my power of attorney and freeze Dad's accounts pending a full financial review. The process took 2 weeks, but finally, everything was in place. I didn't tell Trent. I just waited. The next day, Trent tried to make a withdrawal from Dad's account to cover his condo payment. Declined. He tried his debit card. Declined. He called the bank, furious, demanding to know what was going on. They told him the account was under review and all transactions were frozen until further notice. Within an hour, my phone rang. It was Trent, his voice panicked and angry. "What the hell did you do, Adam?" I stared at my phone, letting it ring. I didn't answer. I wanted him to sit with that panic, to feel the same helplessness I'd felt when I found out he'd stolen everything. Let him wonder. Let him scramble. Let him finally understand what it felt like to lose control. The power had shifted and he knew it. Trent didn't take the account freeze quietly. He immediately started calling our cousins, aunts, and uncles, spinning a story about how I was manipulating Dad and trying to take over everything out of spite. But I'd already anticipated this move. Days earlier, I'd sent a detailed email to every family member laying out the entire timeline, the money I'd sent, the caregiver contract, the fake business invoices, the audio recording, everything. I didn't editorialize. I didn't add drama. I just presented the facts and let them speak for themselves. One by one, family members started reaching out to me. My cousin Jenna texted, "I always knew something was off with Trent. Thank you for standing up for Uncle." My uncle called, "If you need anything, a lawyer, a witness, anything, I'm here." Even my aunt, the one who'd originally called me in Seoul, sent a long message apologizing for not seeing the truth sooner. Trent's web of lies was collapsing. He was drowning and he didn't even realize it yet. He'd burned every bridge trying to cover his tracks, and now he had no one left to believe him. With my power of attorney reactivated and the financial review underway, I notified the bank that Trent's condo had been purchased with misappropriated funds from Dad's accounts. I provided documentation showing the direct transfers, the dates, and the amounts. The bank launched its own internal investigation. Within 3 weeks, they flagged the condo purchase as fraudulent. I didn't personally evict Trent or call the repo company. I didn't have to. The legal system did it for me. One morning, Trent woke up to find a repossession notice taped to his door. His truck was towed the same day. The condo went into foreclosure proceedings. Everything he'd built on stolen money was crumbling. I didn't gloat. I didn't send him angry messages. I just stopped covering for his lies and let the consequences catch up to him. And they did. Fast and merciless. The life Trent had built was never real. It was a house of cards, and I just pulled out the foundation. Trent showed up at my apartment one night, unannounced. I heard the pounding on the door and looked through the peephole. His eyes were wild, his hair a mess. I opened the door slowly. "Why are you doing this?" he shouted, his voice cracking. I stared at him calmly. "I'm not doing anything, Trent. You did this. I'm just stopping you from digging deeper." He stepped forward, fists clenched. "You have no idea what I've been through. I've been taking care of Dad for years while you were off living your life in Korea." I didn't raise my voice. "You weren't taking care of him. You were stealing from him. There's a difference." He punched the wall beside my door, leaving a dent in the drywall. I didn't flinch. "You're going to regret this," he hissed. "No, Trent," I said quietly. "You're going to regret what you did. And you already do." He stood there for a moment, breathing hard, then turned and walked away. I closed the door and locked it, my hands steady. I felt no satisfaction, no victory. Just exhaustion. And relief that it was almost over. Within a month, I had Dad move to a new care facility, one with real, qualified staff, proper medical oversight, and a warm, welcoming environment. It cost more, but I didn't care. I used the money I'd saved and some of what was recovered from Trent's fraudulent accounts to make sure Dad was comfortable. His new room had windows overlooking a garden. I brought his old recliner, the framed wedding photo of him and Mom, and as many familiar items as I could salvage. I even brought my old keyboard. One evening, I sat beside him and played Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, Mom's favorite. Dad sat in his recliner, eyes closed, a faint smile on his face. When I finished, he opened his eyes and looked at me. "Still got it," he whispered. I smiled. "Thanks, Dad." He reached out and squeezed my hand. "You're a good boy, Adam. Always were." For the first time in months, I felt peace. Dad was safe. He was cared for. And most importantly, he remembered me. that was worth more than any amount of money Trent could have stolen. Trent tried to sue me, claiming I'd stolen his rightful power of attorney and damaged his reputation. His lawyer reviewed the case, saw the mountain of evidence against him, and quit halfway through. No reputable attorney wanted to touch it. Trent ended up representing himself in a hearing that lasted less than an hour. The judge reviewed the financial records, the audio recording, the medical reports, and the testimonies from the accountant and the nurse. She looked at Trent with barely concealed disgust and ruled in my favor on every count. Trent was ordered to repay what he'd stolen, nearly $100,000. Since he had no assets left, the court garnished his wages indefinitely. He lost his truck, his condo, and his reputation. Friends stopped returning his calls. Family members cut him off. He ended up moving into a cramped studio apartment, working a low-wage job just to survive. He didn't just lose money. He lost the narrative. No one believed him anymore. And that was the worst punishment of all. I decided to stay in the States. I took a teaching position at a local high school, something I'd always wanted to do but never had the chance. It paid less than my job in Korea, but it kept me close to Dad. Every weekend I visit him. We sit in the garden, look through old photos, and sometimes I play piano for him. His memory still fades in and out, but he calls me son. He knows who I am. The house may be gone, but I reclaimed something far more important. My relationship with Dad. I realized that home isn't a building or a piece of property. It's the people you love and the moments you share with them. Trent took a house. But I got my father back. And in the end, that's all that really mattered. I sleep peacefully now, knowing I did the right thing. Not for revenge. Not for money. But for the man who raised me, who trusted me, and who deserved so much better than what Trent gave him. People say revenge is about rage, about getting even, about making someone suffer the way they made you suffer. But that's not what this was. This was about knowing my worth and letting the truth speak for itself. I didn't ruin Trent's life. He built it on lies, theft, and manipulation. All I did was stop covering for him. I pulled back the curtain and let everyone see what he'd really been doing. The consequences were his own. Trent had to face the life he'd actually created, without the stolen money, without the fake success, without the lies propping him up. And that was the real punishment, living with the truth. I learned something through all of this. You don't need to shout to be heard. You don't need to rage to be powerful. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is stay calm, gather your evidence, and let the facts do the talking. Dad's at peace now. I'm at peace now. And that's the only victory that matters.